Floppy as a limp noodle, man. This shifter is a nightmare. Well, it's not that bad, but it is kind of hard to drive when it's this loose, and it's a very common problem on these Subarus. This 2000 Impreza, it's had one bushing replacement, universal joint replacement by previous owner, but we need to do it again. So that's what we're going to do with this project today. We are going to actually pull the shifter out of the car, replace all of the bushings, get it back in good working order, and make sure it's a nice tight shift for the rest of our use of this car. So hang with us and watch us do it step by step, and you can learn along the way some of the tips and tricks I uncover. And so I'm going to go ahead and take the interior trim apart, pull the whole shift mechanism out from the car, through the top. You do have to do some things underneath, of course, to get it all freed up, but I'm going to pull that out and do the work on the bench and then put it all back together. So I'm doing as much work as I can here inside the car before I put it up on jack stands, basically just to try to keep the interior clean. So I'm going to do some disassembly work up here, then I'll go underneath and do the roll pins and separate the shifter from the transmission, and then come back up here and pull it out. But to start with, I think I just need really a Phillips screwdriver, but I might have to do some prying, so I've got a regular screwdriver as well. I'm going to start. You should be able to just unscrew the shift knob. I don't know if it's ever been taken off, so we'll give it a shot. And yeah, it just came loose just like that, so that's pretty easy. And just comes loose. That's pretty simple. Next, I want to take this trim piece off, so let me move the camera a little bit. All right, so the first thing I want to do is take this center console piece out. So lifting the lid on this door, there's two Phillips screws. One of them on my car is covered up with a cap. They might both be covered up from the factory, but just using the flathead screwdriver, you can just pop that right off, and then just go ahead and remove the two Phillips screws. And then you should be able to just pull up, and sure enough, it just comes right off. And for mine, there is a electrical connector as well, and that is for the side view mirrors adjustment. So you just need to depress the tab and pull this out. And it looks like this has been opened up before, and some of the tabs here have been broken off, but not going to worry about that one this time. And now we've already got the shift knob loose, so this part with the shift boot should be able to just lift right out. And sure enough, that comes right out. So that's pretty straightforward as well. And now to be able to get the shifter out, I need to pull the center console out. And there are some Phillips screws here, one here in the center, and then there are three inside the center console cubby hole here. Should lift right out and pull out, just like that. Next, we need to get access to the plate that's on top of the shifter. I've not seen this in other videos where this is a pretty thick foam pad instead of a felt thing that you can just rip, but it's got these four white plastic nuts, I guess. I just unscrew those, and then this rubber gasket thing should just lift up, I hope. Okay, and that's what this piece looks like. So it's actually a pretty extensive piece. And then we can get to the Phillips screws that hold the plate down for the dust boot and the shifter. Okay, and with the metal plate off, the dust boot can be lifted free as well. And that is really the extent of what I want to do up here before I go jack up the car, put it on jack stands, and release it from down below. A video underneath this car, even up on jack stands, this is a challenge at best. I'm going to do my best to show you what I'm doing. First, just to kind of give you the lay of the land, right here, catalytic converter, and then right in front of it is the rear of the transmission, and this is the front of the transmission. You've got this cross member here taking up the frame, and then basically a skid plate down here, and the transmission mount is here. So what we're going after is up here at the back of the transmission, and there is a 12mm nut that you need to remove to get this big bushing and this arm off of a post that it's on. And then the more challenging part, let me zoom in, is the actual universal joint. There are roll pins. There's 2 of them that should be up in here. It was a Subaru shop that replaced this last time for the previous owner, so I'm assuming that it is all in good shape up there. So there you can see the 2 roll pins there that need to come out. And then we can go up top and pull the shifter out of the vehicle. And this is the actual universal joint that we need to go up and replace, and I'll show you why once we get it out. Before I take this off, I also want to point out that there is a hole on this bracket and there's a hole on the universal joint, and that is for a spring that holds the universal joint in the neutral position, and the spring on this car is missing. I did buy another spring and I plan to install that when I put this all back together. So I'll go ahead and take this nut off and pop that off of the post with Pry Bar, and then we will use roll pin punches to punch out and hopefully not lose those 2 roll pins. All right, y'all, I failed you in a couple of different ways. First, I didn't get video of me actually getting the roll pins out because I got so frustrated. I was like, F it, I'm just gonna get the camera out of the way, wail on it until I figure it out, and then I missed the moment. But let me give you some lessons that I learned, because I didn't see this information readily on the videos that I watched. So here you go. First, you'll need a few different roll pin punches. I have a link in the video description of the ones I got from Harbor Freight. Nothing super special. But let's see, there are actually 2 roll pins. I thought maybe previous owner, they didn't put the inner roll pin back in. And so I actually got the whole thing to come out as 1 unit because I got this first roll pin most of the way out, but I didn't realize it because you can't really see what's going on at the top. But anyway, the inner roll pin, you want to use a 3/16 roll pin punch, and that will slide inside of the larger roll pin and hit the bottom of the inner roll pin, and then you can punch that out. If I'd have honestly, I think I was using this one and I just didn't know how much further I needed to go, and so I pulled it out. So that was my first failure, just not really realizing what I was doing. And then the roll pin punch to use once you get the inner one all the way out, a 1/4 inch roll pin punch is what you need to punch this all the way through. But what I realized is if you start with a slightly larger one, the 5/16, that'll cover the whole base of the roll pin, and it'll actually fit through the hole in the universal joint, the Subaru joint, but it will not fit through the inner shaft. The hole in here is a little bit smaller for the roll pin probably, but use the 5/16 to get this outer roll pin inside of the universal joint, and then take your 1/4 inch and you'll be able to get it inside the hole, and then you can hit it and then just blast it through. But if you won't be able to get it all the way through with the larger one, with the 5/16, because the punch itself will hit the outer side of the shaft that's in here with the shifter. So you really kind of need 3 punches, I think. And another thing that I did is I use a long socket. So this one is, so this one's 13 millimeter, and I can fit the larger punch into this one, and then a 7/16 inch socket for the smaller punches, and that give you a little bit of extension on the punch, because you have to go in a little bit sideways because that transmission mount brace is right in the way of being able to go straight up in there. So now that I've figured this out, taking them out, hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to put them in. But this is what the roll pins will look like, and I'm going to go ahead and just use the small punch to get the inner roll pin out of here. And yeah, so that another failing of mine. It took about 2 hours to figure all this out. So hopefully these tips will help you so that you don't spend nearly as long trying to get this done. So I've had the car in 5th gear the whole time. It seemed to give the best access to the roll pins, but now that those roll pins are out, I should be able to pull it in a neutral or maybe, 2nd gear, and that should pull it off the transmission shaft. Yep, and I could feel it give, so it's not attached anymore. And so now what we need to do is get the boot free, and then I need to actually slide the back of the shifter forward to get the shifter out of the rear bushing. And so then the shifter will be free of this rear bushing, that big side bushing, and then the that universal joint from the shaft into the transmission. So I had the cover on the chisel tip of my pry bar, and that back bushing is secured pretty tight to the shifter. So I just pushed up against the base of the shifter. I don't know if you can see it down here, to get enough force to push it out of the bushing. After I went down below and made sure that the shifter linkage and that other bigger bushing are all clear, so there's nothing preventing it from moving forward, and it just needed a bit of force. So be prepared for it to just need a little bit of muscle to get it to slide out of that bushing. But now it's all free, so now we just got to figure out how to wiggle it out. And it just really liked where it was at for all of those years, so it was easier to push it out from the bottom than to pull it out from the top. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got. First, it's obviously old and dirty, so I'm going to clean that up with some brake cleaner. Inside the dust boot, again, it's dirty. Dust boot is in pretty good condition at the top, but the expandable boot here at the bottom is ripped. I'm not going to worry about it at this point. Just going to leave it that way. It's not going to cause any significant problems with it working. Now the bottom snap ring is rusted. I am going to try to get the snap ring off and take the shift lever out of the socket just to re-lubricate that. And then, of course, the universal joint absolutely destroyed both of the bushings, so that needs to go. That's why we're here. I'm gonna get the old universal joint and the old bushing out first. I have a new set of bushings. Like I said, they're white line bushings, and they should be better than rubber from factory, and they're polyurethane. And I'll leave a link. All the parts I'm using, tools, etc. I'll leave a link in the video description and on my Amazon storefront. But if I'm lucky, these will just push right out. But we'll have to see, otherwise I'll pry it out. I'm never lucky, so we'll go with the pry out method or something else to get it out. And this bushing was replaced in 2007, I think, so it's reasonably old, but not too terribly old, but it's still in pretty good shape. But I'm just going to go ahead and replace everything and never have to worry about it again. So interestingly, this side is 12 millimeter, the nut, and the bolt head is a 10 millimeter. And yeah, there is no bushing material left inside this thing. It is totally floppy. Compare that to the new one, lots of bushing material and reasonably stiff as well. So looking forward to having this installed. Let's go ahead and get this snap ring off, and then I can take the shift lever out of the boot and clean out the boot and lubricate the ball on the shift lever. So just snap ring pliers. It's really rusty, so I don't know how easily it'll come off. Looks like pretty easily actually. Yeah, came off pretty simple. Just like that. And if you can see it, there's really no grease in the bottom of this cup anymore. It's just all caked with dirt and muck. So I'll get this all cleaned up, start putting it back together. All right, so the cup is all cleaned up, so now I'm gonna put some red grease in there. Give it lots of lubricant, so it'll last for a while. And then I'm just gonna mash the ball back into the cup. Lovely mess comes shooting out, but that's okay. There is inside the lip, or inside the boot, there is a little lip where the top of the cup goes into, so to make sure that that fits in there. And then the lever shaft slides over top, and then you just got to get your snap ring down and squeeze it all together. Of course, you want to make sure your snap ring is fully seated. And this one is not quite. There we go. I'll go ahead and put the bushing into this larger shaft and get it back into the car. And the kit does come with some bushing lubricant as well, so I'll use that too. So when you go to install your new universal joint, you want the hole and the little bracket for the spring to be down on the down side. You don't want it facing up towards the shifter, you want it facing down, and that's because that way it'll line up with the spring hole on the bracket for this lower shaft. That's it. Now before we go put the shifter back in, we have to do some crazy blind reach stuff with a 12mm socket. We're going to remove this rear bushing, so it's two 12mm bolts that you basically just have to feel for them. Trust me, they're back there. Alright, and that's all there's to it. So this is the old bushing. Honestly, this one doesn't look horrible either. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and replace everything, and it's actually a little bit cracked here in the back. So either way, just get rid of it, put a new one in. But this is the new one, and you can see the shape is generally the same, but it's a lot thicker here on the wings, and these short little bolts are not going to cut it. That's okay though. because White Line in their kit sends these longer bolts, and these will work just fine. So again, it's blind feel for how to get it installed, and just thread them in, tighten them down. So we can start putting the shifter in, just fish it down the holes like it was before. But before we go too far, we want to get a good amount of lubricant on the back of the shifter. It's gonna go in through that bushing. It was a real pain to get it out of that bushing. This brand new bushing is going to be even tighter. So get some good lubrication, and then I'm going to try pulling it in, but I'm guessing I'm going to have to get underneath and probably push on the end of that shift linkage to get it to seat up against in through the bushing. And for good measure, I'm going to put some, reach down and put some right in the bushing as well. I failed you again, my friends. Again, it was another effort moment. Putting that bushing in first and then putting the shifter into the bushing. Mr. Subaru is a demigod that if he can do that, and in as short a video as he's made this activity to be. Anyway, I couldn't do it. I tried a whole bunch of options underneath, none of them worked. So here's what I did. I took the bushing out. The shifter is in the car, loose underneath, but it's in the hole. And then getting the linkages underneath in just the right spot, you can actually put the bushing in down here in through the hole and push with all your might, and you can get the bushing onto that back shaft. And then you can actually thread the bolts in and tighten it down. But there was a lot of getting in and out of the car, getting underneath, getting the linkages down below are both loose, so they tend to fall in a place that makes it inconvenient for what you're trying to do. So there's a lot of back and forth. It probably took me at least 30 to 45 minutes to get this the way I want it. But now it is installed, and now go underneath and hook everything up down there. And based on how everything's going so far, probably a few lessons I'm going to learn the hard way down there too. Remember, when you put it in, the larger end, it'll make sense. It's thicker at the bottom than at the top, so the thicker end goes to the bottom, so there's a little bit of slope. Well, sorry, I thought I was recording. I guess I didn't, but all I did was take the new universal joint and slide it over the shaft from the transmission, and I used a roll pin punch to line up the holes so that it should be pretty well aligned when I go to put the roll pins in. And then I put lubricant on the post for this bushing and on both faces of the bushing, and now I'm using a pry bar to get the bushing over that post. And don't forget the plate that goes over top of that bushing as well. And then nut and tighten it down. Let's see if this works. I taped the pin to the punch. For this inner roll pin, the hardest part was getting it started, and what I ended up doing was taking my 3/16 roll pin punch and punching it into the outer roll pin to widen it just a little bit so I could get the taped smaller inner roll pin, taped it to my punch, and then I could get it up in there and get it started. And then once I got it started, it actually went in pretty smoothly. And so now it is flush with the bottom of the outer roll pin. It's really hard to show you this on video, unfortunately, and it's really boring. It's me tapping for long periods of time. You really need to get a good swing, a good bit of momentum behind it to actually get it to move. So it's hard to do here on jack stands. Having a lift with these roll pins obviously would be an advantage, but both roll pins are now all the way in, and I'm glad that's done, and I hope I never have to do it again. All right, so the last thing we have to do down here is take a new spring and connect it from the left side of the universal joint to that hole on the bushing. The day I installed the universal joint and everything, it was a super long day. I couldn't get the spring to go on, and I just gave up for the day. So it's actually a couple weeks later, and I wanted to try it again because I had the car up on jack stands, and I got it done in about 3 seconds. So the way I did it is I brought in one hand up here, and then the other hand is from the back side. You can see the finger here. And first I put the spring in through the hole on the universal joint, and you can see on the bracket here there's a cutout where the spring itself is supposed to go. So to have it in this orientation, you actually need to put well, I found it easier, put it in through the back first, and then you swing the spring around so that it'll come up and hook in here. And the spring will only reach to about where this round cutout is. So then I use needle nose pliers, just holding on to kind of like when you do drum brakes, holding on to the hook, and then stretched it and pulled it. And I could reach up this way with the needle nose pliers, grab onto that spring, pull it. It stayed hooked on the back side, and then I could fit it in and get it up there. Literally, it took 2 or 3 minutes with some light and some more patience. So that's how I did that. Hopefully that helps. Sorry I didn't catch it on video when I was doing it. All right, we're all done underneath the car. Now we just need to put everything back together up here on top. We've got our dust boot and our plate and our Phillips screws. Now we have our dust cover. All right, friends, that is a wrap on doing the bushings for the Subaru Shifter. It was a real challenge for me. Those roll pins were nothing to joke about. It's my first time with them. This job, I think it's 5 p.m. I think I started around 11 a.m., so 6 hours. Probably 3 hours of that was just roll pins, doing it all for my first time. Hopefully some tips and tricks that I learned, I was able to share. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Comments, questions, point out where I made mistakes. Obviously I made some. I'm still learning how to work on the Subaru and something smaller than a Jeep. My son wanted to replace the shift boot, and I did as well, but the plastic that holds the bottom of the boot in place is just a complete disaster, broken in a whole bunch of places, so I need to buy one of those. But it's real simple to take this off. I'll make a video on it. It'll be a lot quicker and easier than doing any of the bushing work. In the end, I'm happy. Obviously it's great. It's not floppy anymore. It stays where it's supposed to. It's still a little flimsy there without that spring, but not nearly the way it was. So success just took a super long time. Thanks for your support, comments, questions, and if you want to support the channel financially, maybe help me get some more Subaru parts or tools, super thanks on the video. buymeacoffee.com, or buy something off the Amazon links for the tools or parts, or the Amazon storefront. I've got linked in the video description. But more videos to come. Thanks for watching. You guys take care and have a good one.